What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Unfabricated. I'm really excited. I'm always excited because it's always a good thing if you ask me. Got a real special guest, man. My man Timothy Rodriguez sitting over there. Introduce yourself to the people.
Hello, I am Timothy Rodriguez, as Chris said, and yeah,
Yeah, man, I'm happy to have you on. I had thought about getting you on the show. I had saw a post that you made and it intrigued me. I was like, wow, this kid is brave. This kid
yeah,
is really brave. And as always on Unfabricated, we're never gonna drop names. We're never gonna drop the names of churches or ministries because this is not a sniping
right.
organization that we got going on here. We're not here
Hmm.
to character assassinate. We're not here to, take down ministries and bring down the church. We're here because there are a lot of people who are disenfranchised. There are a lot of
Yeah.
people who don't know where their place is. It's funny because I was talking to somebody and I was just talking about my dating life, right?
Hmm.
And I was like, I feel bad for these girls, and because I'm so complicated. I'm like,
Right.
on one hand, I'll find a girl and she wants me to worship the devil with her, and I'm like, nah, I can't do that. And then on the other hand, I got a girl that wants me to go to church 4 days a week with her, and I'm like, nah, I'm
Right.
not going to do that either. So, like, where do we
Right.
find place for people like me? You know what I'm saying? Who
Right.
who aren't totally who aren't totally off the edge and trying to
Right.
spend all the time in church, but also recognize that there's a God who loves me, and I don't got
Yeah.
all things figured out, and I'm not going to try to, but
Right.
I'm just going to operate in that. So with that, man,
Exactly.
I really am intrigued with your story. Whatever you feel comfortable with sharing, whatever you feel comfortable not sharing, please omit. um, but for the people out there, man, for the people who you think might find some resonation in your story,
Yeah.
start from how early you want to share.
Right. So it's funny that you say that my post intrigued you because it apparently intrigued 4,000, however many thousand people, and I did not think that at all. Like that wasn't my intention, and I think like that's you saying I'm like courageous and brave. That means so much to me. But a lot of people have said that, and I think when I crafted the post that I did, I didn't think, oh, I'm so brave. If anything, I thought, oh, I'm gonna get so much backlash for this
Mm.
because I was silenced for so many years that I was programmed to think that if this story ever came out, I was done for.
Why is that? Why is that? Why do you
I
feel like you were silenced?
I think it was because I think it's like that parent dynamic where the kid who is the loudest and like talks back the most and doesn't just take everything for what it is as black and white gets like that extra punishment of like, no, you're the disrespectful one, but it's like, no, I'm just opinionated, no, I'm just standing up
Mm.
for myself. And at a certain point I stopped standing up for myself, and I think that that's what the post was about. It was about standing up for myself and standing up for all the people who couldn't stand up for themselves, all the people couldn't, who would never face the people that we're facing in the establishment that we are. I think I was standing up for the people who have lost their lives because of this, have
Mm.
gone through so many things. Eileen's story was amazing, and you guys told it so well. But like, I think that inspired me to do this because, well, so she says my post inspired her post, but her coming on your show was inspirational to me because I think that it's really important to tell my story and in context of she was one of the first people that went through this in this certain place, and I am 15 plus years younger than her, and I
Mm.
went through very similar things. So if for those that didn't see the post, it was basically me talking about my experience with spiritual abuse, with trauma that had to do with the church, with a certain individual, with a few certain individuals. And I think that even when I wrote it, I wasn't writing it to exploit or point fingers at anybody. I
Mm.
think that what I was trying to do is say this is a bigger issue, like you want to do on this show. Like this is a bigger issue in the way they say it in the South so much, like capital C church. Like this is a bigger issue than just my story, and there's so many stories like mine.
Right, right. So what makes you say it's a bigger issue? What made you say that?
I think it's because I know people who have been dealing with this. I know people who have very similar stories to mine. I know people who, like I said, didn't make it to the point where I'm at, where like there was someone else being groomed very publicly by the same person I was being sexually abused by, and that person has been turned against me and won't, you know, deal with me because this goes so deep. This is so much more than just like petty church drama. And I think that that's what people wanted to see. And I think that's why 3,000 plus people saw that post. And I think it was because of just it resonated with a lot of people. Like I spoke to one of my mentors who lives in Idaho, and like her pastor had heard about it. And I'm like, what? I've never even been to Idaho.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that it was for that purpose.
So for the people who don't know, because there might be some people tuning in who, you know, don't know anything about you or this mystical post we're talking about.
Right.
I guess share what you feel comfortable sharing about what it is that you went through.
Yeah. So basically, I grew up in the church, and I was there many, many days of the week, as were you.
I remember.
Right. And I was crawling under the pews, and I was that kid that they say, like, when they were born in church. Like, my mom brought me to church 2 weeks after I was born. And she probably would have brought me the week after, but like, I don't even know if that's legal with doctors. But yeah, so basically grew up in church, and at a very young age was sexually mistreated. I don't like to say abused necessarily, because I think that in different contexts, it means different things. Like, there were older kids who mistreated me, and later on, I'll get to the abuse. But I think that, yeah, by the age of 13, I'd been sexually mistreated by like 2 or 3 older male figures.
If you don't, I'm sorry, if you don't mind me asking, if you don't mind, what does that mean, mistreated, in the context that you're saying?
Yeah, so basically,
as much as you feel comfortable with.
Right. I think I would say most closely, I would say molested. But I think that in the frame of what we're talking about, I think that I don't necessarily fault a person who was 9 and I was 6, you know, like,
okay,
obviously it
experimenting.
It holds weight, but and they were definitely taking advantage, but it's not the same thing as what later went on with a almost 30-year-old. So by the age of, sorry, I'm gonna grab water because I'm dying.
Oh, sure. Listen, hydrate. It's important.
I just like, yeah.
Hydrate.
Okay. So by the age of like 13, I had been very just confused. So I'm being mistreated. I'm seeing all these different things like sexually, but at the same time, I'm always in church. And so this like dichotomy starts to like happen where outside of church, I'm being told that I am gay and that XYZ, and I'm being bullied. And inside of church, I am supposed to feel safe, but now there's starting to be a shifting as I become a teenager, as I become involved in youth ministry, where I think my figuring out of myself was not honored, and it was often taken advantage of. And so basically, when I was about 13, I had a consensual sexual situation with someone else like 2 years older than me. And as I wrote in the post, like, I was brought into this meeting where we were brought with our parents and another pastor. And I didn't name that other pastor in the post because they're an amazing person. It was like 2 pastors need to be in this room. And so basically the parents were asked to leave because me and this other kid around my age were basically like put against each other of like, who's telling the truth, and like, did this actually happen? And so it came out that it happened and it was true. And then I continued to experiment and be a teenage boy, and it wasn't just with other boys, it was with other girls, and it was very nuanced, and I don't think people understood that. And so
You didn't understand that you were a teenager exploring.
right,
Yeah,
right,
funny. Go ahead.
right, exactly. So I think that I was they wanted to put me in a box and put a lid on it. And I didn't accept that. And I think that that's where the tension started. And so I basically became very close with this leader, this church leader, and I basically worked for them. I volunteered for them. I helped with youth ministry things. I did the whole gambit. There was one point where like I was at church every single day and I was not getting paid. But that's a whole other thing.
You can talk about that. That's all a part
Right.
of the church story. But go ahead, finish what you're
Right,
saying.
right. So I was in church like every day, just devoting time to this person, and it would be like, oh, are you coming to work today, or like are you coming in today? And I was like, oh, this quickly went from volunteering to being like almost like an allegiance thing.
Right.
And so within that context, there were things taken out of context in terms of like, oh, he's flirting with me. And it was like, no, I'm just a teenage boy that made a joke and I can do that too. But it wasn't the same almost. It was like the super hyper masculine kids could like do whatever, and they were doing whatever. And then if I did something, it was perceived as like, oh, trouble. You need to sit down. You need to this. You need to that. And so
Right.
I wrote in the post about this time that I was sent home from church because someone perceived a DM that I posted as flirtatious. I couldn't tell you if it was. It might have been. I was a teenager. And this church leader and their assistant brought me into the office and said, call your mom. And I said, my mom has laryngitis. She can't talk to you. And these are the nuanced things that I didn't write on Instagram. But I was like, my mom has laryngitis. She literally cannot speak to you. And called my mom, who, to no fault of her own, didn't know what was going on at all. And said, hey, Tim's coming home and he'll explain when he gets there. Didn't care to tell me that I was going home. Didn't care to, and kicked me out of church before service on a Friday night.
Wow.
Yeah, and so there were many micro things like that. There was the time I think I might have written about it, but there was the time I was brought into the office in the middle of a service. I'm in service, like sitting because that's what I'm supposed to be doing because I'm not serving, so I want to be getting poured into as well. And so I was sitting in a service and I got a text and I was told to come to the office, and this pastor said, you're wearing makeup in this picture. You're wearing lipstick. And I was like, bro, we're in the middle of what? It's like you're wearing lipstick in this picture. And this line of questioning went on for like 10 minutes until someone stepped in and was like, I was literally there. I've been with him for the past 5 days in a row. He was not wearing lipstick. And so it was a lot of micro things like that. And
so you feel like you were like overly policed, if I can put it that way?
Absolutely. I felt at a very young age like I was a very polarizing figure. And that's weird when you're developing because it's like I'm trying to find my sense of identity, but I feel like whatever identity they're perceiving is very polarizing, very like provocative almost.
Okay.
And I was, like you said, a teenage kid experimenting, just doing teenage things that in any other context wouldn't be perceived the way that they were. And so throughout that, simultaneously, as I'm growing, I write about this family friend who was also a worship leader, who crashed my 16th birthday party, and with their wife, and with their wife and the other kid that they were very clearly grooming, and with their squad at the time, which was teenage kids, and they were pushing 30. So I think in retrospect, that's weird to see, and I did think it was weird at the time, but I didn't think that I was in danger because as much as I was polarizing and like on the inside, I was on like the brim of the inside. Like
how old were you at this point?
16.
16, and the person was 30.
Yeah, they were pushing 30. I think they're a few years younger than you. And so so they crashed my 16th birthday party. Didn't think much of it. A few weeks later, I am on the bus and I get a call, and they're a worship leader. They're from the same church that we've known this person our whole lives, or I've known him my whole life, and you as well knew who he was. But yeah, they call me while I'm on the bus, and they are like very much coming from a mentor standpoint. Like, I want to be there for you, and very quickly it becomes sexual, and I was very confused. Um, because up until that point, no one had been so blatant about it. I think being a sexual abuser, I assume, is something that people are private about or are not so bold in. But this almost 30-year-old man was very comfortable with exploiting what they knew of my past. And it all goes back to that, like, there was no separation of like church and a person and a personal life, because like this person's sister was the assistant that was in the room when my mom got called. It's all very, our lives are all very intertwined. Yeah.
Right.
And so it very quickly became very just manipulative. The first time that something had ever happened, I was very confused, because they said, don't tell anyone about this. I could lose XYZ. As many abusers say, I could lose my wife, I could lose my house, I could lose my job, I could lose the stage, because that stage was so sought after. And so I think at that point, my perspective shifted, and I think that now I wanted the stage, because I wanted to like fight back at that, because it's like, okay, in terms of like, they're seeing this person thinking that they're one person. Yeah. And they're abusing me on the side, but they're leading worship. And then I'm sitting here being like this scandalous kid that's just being a kid.
You're the trouble child.
Right.
You're the problem child. Yeah.
Right. So I was trying to take maybe that narrative back. So I was like, I want to get up there. I want to sing. I want to do the things I'm gifted at, because I mean, if this God that we're talking about is who he is, then I get to use my gifts too. And they don't just get to be like secretive and like working in church all week, Monday through Friday, but then come Sunday, I'm out of the equation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I began like leading worship. Well, not leading worship, but being on the worship team. And simultaneously, while this was all going on, and this person continued this relationship, and it only got more intense, and I tried to break it off, and it was very manipulative. There was death threats involved. I'm gonna kill you. It was very textbook.
Yeah.
But a lot of it, this is something I don't think I've ever publicly shared. A lot of it was very nuanced, because it was digital. A lot of it. It was FaceTimes, it was pictures, it was phone calls. And so I didn't, as a 16, 17, 18-year-old, I didn't process that what was going on was abuse to the extent that other people see abuse.
So you expound on that. So you didn't really feel like you were being taken advantage of or abused? Is that what you're saying? Am I getting that right?
I think I knew I was being taken advantage of. I just think I thought I didn't have the same platform that maybe someone who had been physically assaulted sexually, would have. I thought, oh, who's going to think anything of text messages or of pictures of, and at the time, I mean, how's a 16-year-old to know that like they're producing child pornography? Like,
right.
I didn't know. And this person knew that I was kind of naive in that sense. And so that went on for 2 years, and it was very taxing on me. And I became more rambunctious and more rebellious. And I think that was perceived as more of that narrative of like trouble child. But at the same time, I was very beloved. Like because I grew up in this place, and there's this level of like family, even if it's like the cousin that you can't stand. Like,
right.
It's
very confusing, ain't it?
It is. And for a young kid, like I don't think that I ever could have. I don't think that I was ever equipped. I don't think anyone was, and I don't blame my parents. I don't blame other leaders who didn't know what was going on, because I don't think anyone was equipped to tell us what was right or what was wrong, because we were in this place where morally this is supposed to be our compass. This is supposed to be where the things are right. And so there was no separation of right and wrong. So I walked into church and it was chaos, and I went out there and it was chaos. And so it was like, well, why can't I be me who's out there in here? Especially because you're all doing that, you're just not showing it. And so I think that's what separated us. I think I was more I was going through things more publicly because I'm a teenager in the dawn of social media, and that's where that comes into play. But yeah, so while that was going on, there was still a bunch of microaggressions going on at the hand of just like ministry. Someone had a really flirtatious conversation with me and deleted all of their messages and kept my messages and printed them out and gave them to a leader, and that ended up all the way at the senior pastor level. And it was like, what are we going to do with it? Was always like, what are we going to do with you, almost. And it was like, I don't know, like, let me go to church and figure it out. Like, isn't that like supposed to be the goal?
Right. Work out your salvation.
Right. And so what was also nuanced was I graduated high school very early. So I graduated high school at 16, and I went to college immediately. And I'm an October baby. So I turned 17 in my first semester of college.
Oh, wow.
And so that also made that thing weird of like, there's this like portion of like, I feel weird because I don't know if people are going to believe me, because so much of it is through a phone and all of that. And then it's like, and I'm kind of an adult now, but I'm not. And so I went to community college for a year, and then I went away to Liberty in Virginia, and this person continued the relationship. And I think that that's when I realized that I was either going to have to do something, or something had to be done, because like now I was trying to start this new chapter and I couldn't, because this person was still influencing me and still manipulating me. And they were still married at the time, and they were saying, oh, I'm going to come see you. I'm going to come, all these things. It was almost like they tried to romanticize a relationship so that I wouldn't think that I was being abused and mistreated. Yeah. And so I think what's important is that in that context at college, because I was at a Christian college, there was so much more like human conversation. It wasn't so textbook.
Right.
And so I had this amazing psychology professor who said in one class one day, I don't remember her exact words, but I will never forget that she basically said, like, these are the forms of abuse, and just because you've been abused through a phone or through a computer or XYZ doesn't mean that you haven't been abused. You've been abused. And that hit me like all the bricks. And I think it was at that point that I was like, I can somehow take control of this.
I'm sorry. Up until that point, had you told anybody about what was happening?
No one knew at that point.
So you were just carrying it.
Yeah, I think one friend might have known, but she was around my age, so it wasn't like, she was like a year older than me, so it wasn't.
No, but none of the leaders or nobody knew about it.
No. And I did write that, like, I tried to come out with it, but it was met with like, I was almost silenced before I even got to say anything. So I can't say anybody fully knew, but I think I tried to allude to it as much as possible with multiple leaders.
And what do you mean you were silenced before you even came out?
I think because I tried to allude to it and didn't just come straight out and say it, they had the opportunity to be like, oh, don't say what you're saying, or like whatever it is, like, you know, like just like change the subject, or they wanted to protect this person. And so I think one person knew around my age. And so I had that revelation, and I was like, I can take control of this. And I tried to, and it didn't work. And because I felt like this person still had so much power over me. And so they ended up doing something that I definitely like will never share publicly, but they did something that was just like so far over any line of human decency or respect. And I called them and I said, don't ever talk to me again. Cross the street when you see me. Don't. And I thought that at that point I didn't have any power because I was 18 and now I'm an adult. And so like I I thought that automatically you consent to it because you turned 18. And so my perception was very twisted. And so I cut the person off, and that chapter ended for a minute. I came back. I got very depressed after that ended because this person had manipulated me to believe that I loved them and that I was in some sort of relationship. And I got very depressed. I started failing classes. I just, my roommates would come in and be like, hey, you've been in this bed for 3 days with the shades closed, watching the same show on Netflix. Like maybe something's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't get that. I just got that I want to go home. And I thought that going home would maybe be different this time, and I would maybe stand up to this person, or I would come out and say it to people. And so at that point, I started to share with very close people, and they weren't necessarily leaders. And well, as you know, and a lot of people know, like my family was very intertwined with the church and very involved, and so some was family, and so that was a family thing, that wasn't a leadership thing. So one very close family member knew, and one of my leaders, and I think no one knew what to do with the information. I think at that point I still didn't know what to do with that information, because I knew that no matter what, no matter how much of a box I was put in, I kind of wanted to protect this person. And I wrote about that. Like I think I was defending people for a long time that didn't need to be defended.
Why do you feel like, because I hear that often.
Yeah.
This is not something that I just heard just now. It seems that there's a lot of responsibility placed on the shoulders of the people who've been victimized, or the people who are going through these things, to protect somebody,
right,
or to, not to try to make sure somebody doesn't get in trouble. Where do you think that comes from?
I think that comes from that suppression that I went through. That I think that comes when there's this power shown to you before anything of that caliber even goes on. So like that kicking me out of church and the text messages being printed and all of that, I think that, and them not knowing what to do with me and having this power to kick me out of church, and it like looming over me.
Gotcha.
I think that that's where it came from for me. And I think that because I had to defend myself so much at such a young age, I thought that at that point no one was going to believe me or care. Really, like I knew that the people that I knew that my family would care, and at this point my parents still didn't know. Like I knew that those people would care, but at the same time I knew that if I told X person, X cousin who was also involved in church, that someone was squaring up, and I wanted no parts in drama, because I was painted as this dramatic person. Which I recently got diagnosed with ADHD as an adult, and I'm like, bro, I just had a lot of energy.
Right.
Yeah, I was just distractible, right? And like I learned that with ADHD, like there's impulsivity, and there's things that like that are very clear signs, but they were perceived as me being all the things that I said. So, yeah, so I came back and I got on the stage, and I was living two lives because I was dealing with the aftermath of this abuse. And at this point, I think I think at this point the person had left the church. But now I was left to deal with the aftermath, and nobody knew still. Like nobody fully heard me. And then slowly I started telling people. And I think that by the age of maybe 19, a lot of people knew. And I think that there was still a window where someone could have done something in terms of like criminal charges or yeah, really, because I mean, if I knew then what I know now, I would have gone to the cops. I would have done something to protect myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so because of this, started living like a very double life. I was on, and I think this is important to the story. Like, I never claimed to be a saint when I told this story,
Mhm.
and I think that that's really important because I never wanted to come across as like holier than thou, um, and I don't think people perceived it that way, but like that was important for me. Where like
Mhm.
I was wilding out too, like
Right.
everybody, we were all wilding out. And I talked to someone that also went to this church, and they during all of this post stuff, and
Mhm.
they said something really that struck me, and that since I posted that and a lot more has come out, uh, they said
Mm.
everybody knew what was going on. We were young kids, and they're twice my age.
Wow.
But they, well, yeah, a little under twice my age, but they were like, everybody knew what was going on, in the context of them being rambunctious kids and messing around with other boys and XYZ.
Mhm.
Um, and that struck me because it's like, at this point, I'm living this double life, but everybody knows.
Mhm.
And it's almost like the big pink elephant in the room. Like,
Right.
do I even want to be in this place?
Right.
But this is all I know. And this is where my identity is because
Mm.
I have been shaped so much here, whether for positive or negative. And so, yeah, I started leading worship, but at the same time was out in the streets, smoking the devil's lettuce and doing
I do
all
that.
the
Go ahead.
things, right, and doing all the things that I just didn't need to be doing in that moment.
Mhm.
Especially when I was taking up such a sacred thing of like leading worship, of being on the platform. And I think that the importance of that was gone at that point.
Mm.
I think when you were on that same platform, it was a different world.
I can see
And
that.
yeah, yeah, and I think that by that point, the sanctity of that had been taken away, and so I didn't have respect for those leaders anymore. I didn't have respect for myself. I didn't have respect for the church, really.
Right.
But I was still there because that's where my family goes. That's where I've grown up. That's who I am. Um, I think it was almost more pivotal than school in a way. You know, like school
Mm.
shapes a lot of people, but it was like, yeah, school is however many 8 hours of the day, but afterward I'm in church like God knows how many hours, and I was heavily involved. So I
Right.
you know, I think I spent half time church, half time school. And so yeah, in worship leading, wilding out, and it comes out that we're smoking weed and acting a fool, and I'm brought into a meeting with this leader, and I tell them about basically the source and the root, which is this abuse, and they don't do anything about it.
Mm.
They kind of just fault me in a way.
Mm.
They're like, okay, well, you shouldn't be wilding out. So,
Don't do that.
right, right. And it's like,
Like that.
hey, I just said I got sexually abused by someone in this building. Okay. And
Right.
so I continued to, but like I said, everyone knew. So I continued to be on the platform and doing worship and being a youth leader and doing all of the things. And then that December, so this is December of 2017 or 2016, um, I had a happenstance meeting, bumping into the person who abused me.
Mhm.
And uh, it was pivotal because at this point I felt like I should have the power now. Like I have the control of this. Um, and so I accept a ride home from this person because they go to the same community college, which is like what are the odds I end up seeing my abuser, who's at this point now like over 30, well over 30, at the same college that I'm at 19, or 20. And so they give me a ride home, and something happened sexually that was very much manipulated. But at this point, I thought, oh, I'm 20 years old. No one cared. That's what it felt. That's what it appeared to be. Or I shouldn't say appeared to be. If something was done, that meant someone cared. So no one cares. I, it's there's an awareness that I'm living this like double life. So there's no power for me in this. And so that happened, and I began to spiral again in that same way of like when it ended the first time. And this was a one-off event, but it was so deeply reopening of that wound, because the wound had a band-aid over it, because I'm supposed to be getting spiritually fed in this place and healing, but there was no healing there. There was only hurt added onto that. And so so I tell the leader that I had this meeting with 6 months prior about weed and XYZ, that the reason that I'm so spiraling and people are noticing and all of that is because I saw this person. And something happened, and I explained that. And they sit me down out of ministry for a year and kind of excommunicate me almost from like ministry. And a lot of my friends were that worship unit, that team. And so I just felt at that point like I just didn't matter. And that was really hard for me. And all this time, I'm protecting all of these people. I'm protecting this pastor who is now elevated. I'm protecting them, even though there was still, I left out things, but there was still many of those like microaggressions going on in this very complex push and pull relationship. And so, I just felt like I didn't matter. And that was the first time I was going to attempt suicide in that year. And there was 2 people who were mainly in my corner at that point. And one of them called me. I was walking on a bridge, and I got to the point where I was like, I'm done. I can't bear this. And they called me at the exact moment that I was about to do that. And I think that those are the things where I see God, like where I see that like there was a bigger picture. And so they take me home from this bridge. We meet up, they take me home, and we tell my parents, and of course they're devastated. But what's a parent to do that when they're 21 year old at this point, 21 year old tells them that they were sexually abused from 16 to 18, and that they saw this person at 20. Like what like, I don't fault my parents at all. They're amazing and they walked with me through that. But it was like, at the same time, they were a part of this organization. And so it's very nuanced in that way. It's it's not like I don't know other people's experiences, because I've only experienced this, but like it's not like they're detached. There were kids that went to church that their parents were out in the street somewhere, but they were going to church for their whole family. And I didn't have that. So my parents were very hurt, and they didn't know what to do. But they walked with me through that, and I think that was the best thing that they could do at that point. And so at that point I'm 21, and I am at that point I didn't care anymore. Because now you've sat me down, you like, it felt like they had won. Like they put the lid on that box, and I was always going to be what they said I was.
Right. You said that you gained some perspective with the bigger picture, though. Share more on that. Like, what is it that you mean when you said you were able to really appreciate the bigger picture more?
Yeah, I think in retrospect I'm able to. I don't think at the point that I was able to at all. Like I have this tattoo from that year actually. Like I got it that year. It says, "Take courage, my heart, stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting."
Mm,
And I listened to that song so many times because it was like, God, I'm waiting for something, anything to get me out of this situation. And if you're there, because I don't know, because I'm in the place that's supposed to be my spiritual safe haven,
yeah.
but I'm more scared than when I'm out there,
Yeah.
at college or wherever. Uh, I don't know what you're gonna do, but I'm waiting for it. And
Right.
so, yeah, I think now sitting here, the bigger perspective is that I'm doing this with you, and I'm telling my story, and I'm able to, and
Right.
I stood around long enough in church, no matter the uh, consequence. I've gone to church. I still go to church, but obviously I've moved and my life is different now. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I get that.
even sharing my story, I've had leaders look me in the face and be like, "How are you even in this building right now? Like, how are you in church? How are you? What like? Why would you even want
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
this?" And I think I'm still. I think I have a way better sense of identity, and I know that my relationship with God is personal,
Mm,
and everyone's relationship with God is personal. And I think that I also did that. I also did all of this for those people
right.
who are perceived a certain way, but they have that
Mm,
understanding that their relationship is very personal.
right.
And so, yeah, I think the bigger picture was that, uh, yeah, if you would have told me at that point on that bridge that I was going to be sitting here today, I wouldn't have believed you. If you would have told me at 15 that I was going to be sitting here, I wouldn't have believed you.
Mm,
Through all of that, I wouldn't have believed that anybody was going to listen. And I think that's what's really important.
mm,
Um, I think that's what's like really, really, if anyone takes anything away from this, like I, what I did was standing up for the people who really thought that no one was ever going to listen.
mm.
Um, and yeah, so that was that. And the story continues, but
Yeah.
I, uh, I continued to go there and, uh,
You continue. You still go to the same church.
mhm, mhm.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was 21, uh, and so now basically everyone knows. I'm telling anyone who will listen, and I'm very much living from that place of hurt. And I'm like,
Mm,
I want people to know my story, but it wasn't in this context at all. It
right.
was in like a, it was in like a, this is why I'm acting the way I am. This is why
Right.
I'm angry. This is why I'm playing into the narrative of everything they've said I am
Yeah.
because of this. And so the week of my 22nd birthday, the so I said there was those two people that were really close to me through it all, and so one of them was a family member, and the other was one of my leaders, one of my mentors.
Mm,
And the week of my 22nd birthday, they came to my house, and they we were both in a very vulnerable place, and the person took advantage of me
wow.
um, at 22, and they were married, and they knew the person that abused me. And after the sexual act was done, the person who abused me was texting them. And I thought, oh, joke's on me.
Wow.
Everyone's been laughing this whole time. Everyone's been entertained this whole time. I don't matter. I These are all the things going through my mind. I don't matter. I'm not worth it. No one's gonna listen to me. No one's ever gonna listen to me.
Uh,
Every male leader I'm supposed to trust has now, the male leaders that I've really like opened up to have now, they're all gone.
mm,
There's no redemption in this story because everyone that I'm looking up to that is supposed to be helping me and here for me is now on the list of someone who took advantage of me, someone who only saw me as a sexual
right.
object or
Right.
whatever they wanted to take out on uh, me. And so from that point, I I moved out of New York shortly after that, And that's where the real healing started to begin.
Mm.
Because I was removed from this environment that I thought I was never going to be removed from.
Right.
And I was removed from this pastor who I thought was going to control my life forever, which I very much had reason to believe that. I mean, there were opportunities that I could have had in ministries, in ministry schools, and like internships, and this pastor would call ahead and be like,
Mm.
"Hey, don't deal with this person."
Yeah, I
And
know
so,
that story.
right,
I know that
right,
story, boy.
right,
I'll tell you. Go ahead.
yeah, and it was to keep me close. It was to keep
Mhm.
me, keep me where they could see me, and control me. And so I was removed from that environment, and I was removed from that environment 2019, and then 2020 happened,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
there's a pandemic,
Right.
and we have all this time, and I was left to deal with all of
Mm.
this pain, all of this uh,
So where
hurt.
do you feel in the midst of all this? Where
Mhm.
do you feel God was? Like, did he feel close? Did he feel far? Did like what like because listen, you're going through all this in, like you said, a safe place. This
Right,
is supposed to be a safe place,
right.
and you're going through what you're going through.
Mhm.
So I know a lot of times, like it's almost like the devil's right there on our shoulder, right? Like, and then so again, I guess you explain it. Where did you
Yeah.
feel as plainly as you can put it? Because listen, I'm as raw and honest as
Mhm.
anybody ever. So as plain as you can put it, how did God? Where did God fall in the midst of all of this while it was going on?
Yeah, I think God was that question definitely like brings up emotion because I think that there were multiple versions of God to me at that point. I think
Perfect. Explain it to me.
yeah.
'Cause
Yeah,
we
I
try to
think
put
there
it in the
was
box.
yeah, and I think there was I mean, I knew God was God. I knew that I believed I through all of this I did believe in Jesus. I did believe in the Holy Spirit. I did believe in God. But I think that there was the version of God that saw me going through that hurt and saw me in church just like feeling like I was dying, feeling like
Mm,
just not seen, not heard, not cared for. I
mm,
think that that's where I saw that version of God. And I think I also saw the version of God who had to have been there because I would not be talking to you right now.
mm.
At all. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't have made it. And um I think that that's the God that I choose to believe in, the
Hmm.
God that has been there through this all and is now making a purpose out of it.
Right.
Um and that's really special. And
Yeah.
I think that that's that I'm seeing God in people reaching out and telling me their stories, in people saying that I'm brave or courageous because I never felt like any of those things.
Yeah.
And even still sitting here, I mean, I think I think now I'm proud of standing in that and in that courage and that like bravery. But yeah, I think that God was very close.
Yeah.
Um, he had to have been
Yeah.
because like I said, I wouldn't be here.
What I think people have a hard time grasping is how vulnerable you really are when you
Yeah.
decide to give yourself over to a church or to a ministry. And
Hmm.
again, everybody's going to say, well, you're supposed to give yourself to God, not church. And it's like, yeah, but realistically,
Right.
we all know that that's what you're supposed to do.
Right.
But in
Hmm.
actuality, you usually end up giving yourself to a
Right.
person or a ministry.
Right.
So
Right.
when that trust is broken,
Hmm.
it is a very devastating,
Yeah.
underappreciated thing that happens because
Yeah.
I'll just speak quickly for myself. Here you have a kid who had no value. You come
Hmm.
from the gutter, you come from the hood, and you have an already terrible view of your self-worth.
Right.
So you come into this church with a whole new slate, right?
Right.
Like you grew up in church, so it's a little bit different. But either way, I put my whole trust
Yep.
into this system, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, you're telling me I have value, I have worth, and
Right.
you're showing me that.
Right.
So, okay, I can trust you with everything,
Right.
right? And so then, whatever happens, or everybody's story is different, where the
Right.
trust gets
Right.
broken, and we don't ourselves even. I know I couldn't really appreciate the damage that
Right.
was done.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand it, and the word that
Right.
you kept using that's honestly just perfect is confusing.
Right.
Like you find yourself so confused and
Right.
so misunderstood. And
Right.
it's like, damn, y'all are painting me out to be this devil with a pitchfork, but I don't
Right.
feel like that. And
Right.
I think that that's important to point out. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
That most of us who go through that, we don't like have this devious smile, grin on our
Right.
face, trying to, just figure out ways to make church life difficult.
Right.
We're
Right.
trying to find ourselves within ourselves
Right.
and trying to
Right.
find ourselves within the Lord and trying to find
Exactly.
ourselves within this church and trying to find
Exactly.
ourselves within society all at the
Mm-hmm.
same time.
Right. And I think that the organization that we came from saw that, and I think that there are a lot of stories like that. I know that there are a lot of stories like that of a lot of kids that came from the hood that either their parents were not there or they were looking for something. They were looking for safety. And I think that that's what's been so damaging, especially in that context of like the hood kids, the kids who even not hood kids, like
Not hood kids too. Either
right,
way
like,
you put it, I'm just using my particular story,
right,
but
right,
like everybody's applies who's puts
right,
their whole trust and their whole faith in this place.
right.
And then like I said before, these pastors, they can't be perfect all the time because they're human. But that's the problem, is that your imperfections can destroy and do destroy lives.
Right.
So it's not, to me, acceptable to just accept 90% of the people I do right by. Now that 10% is a big 10%.
Right.
Because now, like yourself, like you said, they can find themselves on the edge of a bridge, literally.
Right.
Literally. So, that was a problem child. The numbers are in my favor. To me, that's not good enough.
Right.
To me, that's
right.
not
And I
good
think
enough.
that I think in our situation, it's way more than 10%.
I was just giving a
right.
kind number.
Right. But I think I almost wish it was 10%. But it's so deep. It's so many years of hurt. There's Eileen's story. There's my story. There's so many stories coming out. And I'm not going to tell anyone else's story for them ever. But I have been encouraging the people who I've heard tell striking stories to come forward. And I think that, I think that this chapter where I'm sitting next to you or across from you virtually, started in 2020 during that pandemic. It was the first time I had the courage to say anything publicly about this leader. And it's funny because I would have forgotten about this, but you were talking about, the hood kids and the marginalized kids. And so basically this establishment made merchandise during the pandemic and wrote Quarantine 2020 on it. And it came across almost celebratory. And in this campaign, it was in the wake of George Floyd. It was in the wake of all the racial unrest going on at the time. And there were only Black people and people of color in this shoot. And they were modeling this merch that made this pandemic seem celebratory. And they were holding a dog. And it just felt very targeted, very tokenist. And it brought up that anger of like thinking about the marginalized and the people of color and the people we didn't go to church in Dallas, Texas with 15,000 people. Like we went to church in New York City. And I think that's also nuanced. But yeah, so it's the first time I ever called this person out. And because I was, at that point I was finding my voice, and I went out and protested for George Floyd, and I was using the courage that I was starting to build. And so I called that person out publicly, and it never caught the kind of fire that this has caught, but people noticed.
Right.
And then I started to try to tell this story, and I talked about the non-disclosure agreements, and I almost alluded to like the don't poke the bear thing that I was talking about.
Yeah.
And they were not happy.
Yeah.
And I live in a different state, and they still were able to. I was on vacation. I wasn't even in North Carolina. I was in another state. And they got my phone number, and they called me, and they screamed at me for 10 minutes. And I think it was at that point that I fully stepped into my power and was like, I'm not this scared little kid anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we ended up having an hour FaceTime where, like I said, it was, now I know it was a bunch of lies and still trying to manipulate me. And that was the last time we texted, but that was the last time we like really like talked. And that was when I explicitly got to talk about the abuse.
Wow.
And that's what yeah.
If there's any message you would want to give somebody listening right now who your story resonates with, what would you tell them?
I think I would tell them that they're not alone. And I know that sounds cliche, but
it's important.
I was surrounded by so many people, and I felt so alone. And I was, and to a certain extent, I was isolated, and I was silenced, like I said. But I would tell people that they're not alone. I would tell people that people are humans. People are people. And that doesn't take away the accountability that they need to be held to at all. But they're not God.
Yeah.
So your relationship with God is your relationship with God. Your relationship with Jesus is your relationship with Jesus. That's yours.
Right.
And
it's
people don't get right. People don't get
yours. I think that's the line right there.
Right.
To me, that's the line right there.
Right.
Because we walk like it's not ours.
Right.
We walk like it belongs to the church, or it belongs to the pastor.
Yeah.
And if you do something and you're dismissed, like the church keeps your Christianity and kicks you out, and your Christianity has to stay here, but you go over there. And I think that's a real good place, I think, to leave everybody. I like that your relationship with God is yours.
Yeah.
That's why it says to work out your salvation.
Yeah.
And the verse that always sticks with me is when you make your bed in the depths of hell, you made them there. You understand what I'm saying? Like, you did it. I did it. We did it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we when we place ourselves there, the Bible says that God is there with us. And I think that is so important. Because like you said, when you get into that lonely state, because I'm the same way, I can sit in a room full of people and feel absolutely by myself.
Right.
And it's in that place where two things happen. You have the one side, the negative, that pulls really stronger, and it's really louder because you're by yourself. So that negative is extremely loud.
Right.
But then there's also that side where you have to remember that the Bible says that God is there with us.
Right.
No matter,
And I think,
no matter our moral situation, again, no matter whatever it is we do,
or what people perceive as their moral, that people think that they're the moral compass.
Exactly.
And I think to add to that, just to tack on to that, for those people who have been looking at me as like a pioneer or like a whistleblower, I think to tack on to that, like you said, if you make your bed in hell, he's there with you. If you make your bed, he's going to be there. However, I think it's important to note that the people that hurt you, the people that have done all of this, if they made their bed in hell, they made their bed in hell.
Right.
And it's not our jobs to protect them. It's not our jobs to defend them. Our relationship with God is our relationship with God.
Right. Forgiveness and consequence are two different things.
Right.
When somebody does something wrong, there needs to be consequences.
Right.
Period.
Right.
Just like anybody else, when there's
Right.
something wrong done, there are to be consequences that are to be paid because we serve a just God. Like
Right.
that's just what it is. That's
Exactly.
different than forgiveness.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, you
think
can, yeah, I forgive. Like truly, please
yes,
forgive. I
yes,
would also say that's the message.
right,
Forgive. You're never gonna forget. You're not gonna
right,
forget. But don't place that, don't place the things that they did to you on God.
mm,
And forgiving isn't making you weak, isn't
right,
making you it's not taking anything away from the pain or the accountability that they need to face. Because I think that the people who need to face accountability, their day is coming. But
mm,
it's not my job to judge them. It's not my job to judge them. It's not my job to keep harboring the hurt and the
mm,
pain and the trauma, because since that post, like, truly to encourage people who are maybe scared right now, or don't know where they stand in this, since that post, my life has been like, that was 2 weeks ago, and it was so liberating. So many amazing things have happened since then.
what I like to hear.
So many amazing doors have opened, and I'm good. Like, people are still checking in, and like, I'm good. Like, genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, for the first time in my life, probably, I
Mm,
am good. And
yeah,
like, you can be. There is a
yeah,
place. There is, like, you feel like you're climbing a wall, and like, there is going to be a giant boulder that you're gonna get on, and you're
yeah,
gonna get to see the view, and you're gonna get to enjoy life,
right.
because this has taken control of too many people's lives for too long.
Right. There's a saying that I ended with that I stand by. I
Yeah.
stand by this saying. I think that if you walk in it and live in it, you'll experience the true freedom that you can walk in and face as you have. And that's,
Mhm.
don't ignore the pink elephant in the room. Ride in
Right.
on that bitch. Pardon my
Right.
ride in on it. This is
Right.
me. This is what happened. I'll
Right.
talk about it before anybody else will talk about it. I
Right.
have no problems. Yeah, I
Right.
effed up, or yeah, I did it, whatever
Mhm.
it is.
Right.
That healing resides in that place. You understand
Right.
what I'm
Tell your
saying? In that
story.
place. In
Right.
that, I really do appreciate your time, man. I
Of
appreciate
course.
you sharing. I know that this is not easy. I
Yeah.
know you've been called brave, but it is. It's mature and it's brave. And so
Thank you.
again, man, anybody who's going through stuff, all these stories, and if you feel like sharing it, you can come into my DM, talk to Timothy, whatever it
Yeah.
is. Please don't hold it in. Holding it
Yeah.
in is toxic and it will kill
Right.
you. And we don't
Take their
want
control
that
away.
for
Take
the
the
living.
control away.
Take
Yeah.
control away.
Take control
Take
back.
control away. Take
Yeah.
it back, whatever you want to
Mhm.
call it.
Yep.
Again, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate your time. I hope that we can do this again, brother. Keep your head up, keep
Absolutely.
pushing, and all that good stuff. Have a good
Thank
night,
you.
everybody.